Welcome to Change Happened, Then What? Where each week in Season 1 of the Friendship Chronicles, I share real-life stories from incredible people I've met over the past 20 plus years. Stories of change, challenge, and what comes next. These are the moments that shaped them, the pivots that led to purpose, and the raw emotions in between. My hope is that these conversations inspire you, offer hope, and in the end, leave you with a smile. So, wherever you are, take a deep breath and let's dive in, because change happens, and that's where the story really begins. I'm your host, Heather Holt, and I'm so happy to have you here today. Today, I'm thrilled to introduce you to someone who is as layered and vibrant as the art he creates, Ericc Cram. He's an artist, a musician, a food service worker, and a truck driver. Yes, you heard that right. Ericc's path has been anything but predictable. And that's exactly what makes his story so compelling. Over the years, his art has kept him grounded, safe, and deeply connected to who he is, especially during life's toughest moments. It's helped him survive in nearly every way, just not quite financially. Yet. Today, Ericc takes us on a journey through the inner world of a working artist. He shares how creativity has always been his lifeline, his language, and his anchor. Whether he's behind the pen, a guitar, or the wheel of a semi-truck. This is a story about reinvention, resilience, and the quiet power of staying true to yourself, even when life veers wildly off course. So, buckle up, literally, and let's dive in to episode 6, Shift Happens, Ericc's story.
It starts with one word, shift. 2 words, shift happens. And that was the name of my comic book. Shift is a story that I've been working on that is based around characters that I've been developing since I was 11 or 12. And so these characters, or, this process of sort of creating heroes, I think came from a place of needing protection, using my own imagination, my own, creativity, to create a sense of self-protection in what was a pretty hostile environment for me as a kid at that age.
As we continue our conversation, I ask Ericc to share a bit more about what he meant by growing up in a hostile environment. It's not an easy topic, and for good reason. This part of Ericc's life is layered, personal, and tied to years of reflection and healing. What he shares next is a glimpse into the challenges he's faced growing up, how those experiences shaped him, and how his relationship with his parents has evolved through the work they've done to better understand one another. Because at the heart, this story isn't just about hardship, it's about growth, repair, and the strength it takes to keep showing up with honesty, with creativity, and with love. Let's hear it from Ericc.
I think that it sort of speaks to surviving in a large family with, alcoholism and mental illness, steering the ship in a large way. Those were the illnesses of my parents at the time. It's just the fact of being a middle kid in a family of 6 kids and then 2 adults in a very small house. My tendency was to hide and shrink to make myself invisible, but also to isolate and create my own worlds. My mom always liked to say that she had to ground me outside because grounding me to my bedroom would have been a reward. That I always spent time hidden away in my room drawing. It's pretty much what I would do. All of my childhood is draw, create characters, or create stories out of characters I loved, like Fantastic Four, Batman, X-Men. Also Disney princesses and stuff like that. So superheroes and Disney characters were pretty much the source of inspiration for my own stories. And then by the time I was 10, the parents were getting divorced, and I was bullied at school, and not even by students as much as the teachers in the 5th grade especially, and they would encourage the students to alienate me as well. Yeah, I didn't really make friends until I was 12 or so. I think I just took to life being surrounded by other kids, but mostly feeling alone and preferring to be alone on one hand, but also dreading, abandonment on another hand. So I think that's where these characters came from. It was funny because in high school they were so dark and edgy.
Yeah, now they're so in with the times.
Yeah. And then it was around 18 or 19, and I remember I was in St. Louis, having just finished high school there, and I found a shop similar to the one that you had in Burlington, the sort of like mystical New Age bookshop kind of thing. And I just took to it. I was really drawn to that kind of culture. And I think that's when the characters cleared up. They went from dark and traumatized, and their stories had to do with how screwed up they were, to they were plugged into numerology.
For those who may not be familiar, numerology is the study of the mystical or symbolic significance of numbers, often used as a tool for self-discovery or divination. It's based on the belief that numbers, especially those connected to your name or birth date, can reveal meaningful insights about your personality, life path, strengths, and challenges. It's at this point in our conversation that Eric shares how his comic series, Shift, begins to evolve. What once emerged from a darker, more personal place began to transform into something lighter, as Eric did the same in his own life. As we continue with Eric's story, I ask him to share a bit about his journey, specifically what it was like when he began traveling around the country. But before he takes us down that road, I want to tell you a bit about what it was like when I first met Eric. He was in his early 20s, still swirling in a world of beautiful chaos, like the free spirit he's always been. I remember feeling this deep motherly instinct to offer him advice, to try and guide him in some way. But I also knew even then that Eric's soul was wise beyond his years. Advice wasn't needed. What he needed was someone to listen. So I listened. I listened to his stories. I listened when he needed to process life, love, art, and all the messy in-betweens. And instead of offering advice, we'd pull out of a deck of tarot cards, and I'd read it for him. It became our ritual, a way of sorting through the noise. And when our store relocated, we made sure Eric had a wall to paint. We gave him space to create, not just because he's talented, but because he belonged. He was part of the fabric of our space, part of our story. And now, I'm so honored to share his. When I started this podcast, and I knew I'd be telling stories of change, Eric's was always on the list, Because if ever there were proof that transformation was possible when you commit to the work, Ericc's is it. So, take it away, Ericc.
2012, I was so ripe with inspiration, and is when I made the comic book, which is more like a mini zine. It's something that for the years I've been able to take to a print shop and just get a stack of maybe 10 or 20 copies to sell or gift or trade. That's really been the extent of my history as a self-published comic book artist, because, I've found it very difficult to balance the pressing needs of, basic survival and income with, expanding and growing that artistic drive. How I'm able to sustain myself. Sure, I wait tables. That's how I pay my bills. But I'm an artist. And this sort of model was able to, kind of bring me from place to place. I lived in Burlington. I lived in White River Junction. And then I moved to Chicago. And having a pretty nice job working at the restaurant at the Lyric Opera downtown Chicago, to moving to New Mexico, which was sort of a left turn I wasn't expecting.
I don't know if you've ever been to New Mexico, but I have. And I can tell you there is something about that place. And I've heard it from so many people too. It's like it pulls something out of you. There's a reason they call it the land of enchantment. For a lot of folks, it feels like home, even if they've never been there before. Maybe it's the light, the energy, the history, or just the space to breathe. Whatever it is, Ericc felt it too, and I think you'll hear that in what he shares next.
When I first went to New Mexico, also in 2012, when I was traveling the States, I completely felt at home like I never had before. Yeah, living in a trailer in a canyon in the mountains in the desert. I was able to just kind of finally have my own sense of peace to myself. I think having a troubled childhood, I had just been sort of chasing chaos because it felt familiar, finding myself in chaotic environments. So it was a real reset for me to have this time. And then that was when the pandemic happened. I felt like I couldn't have been in a better place.
Right.
It's so ideal. Oh no, I feel, a lot of people had a really bad time during the pandemic, but for me it was one of the best times.
Ericc tells me about his life just before the pandemic hit. He was waiting tables at a diner in the desert, making art, building friendships, and for the first time in a long time, feeling free. There was something about the open sky, the creative energy, the people. It felt like life was finally starting to make a little bit of sense, even if his bank account didn't always agree. Financially, it was a grind. He was scraping by, making ends meet, but it was enough, or at least it had been. What strikes me most about Ericc in this season of his life is his mindset. I've seen a lot of people learn how to take from the system, how to just get by, but not Ericc. That's not how he's wired. Even in the midst of chaos and uncertainty, he starts to ask the bigger questions. What can I build? What can I create that I'm proud of? The pandemic didn't crush him. It merely gave him new vision, new motivation, and that's what led to the next big shift.
But then I was asked to stay home and paid more money than I had ever been able to make in my life. And so it was sort of the result of when that was over was a feeling of, I can't go back. I can't go back to waiting tables. I'm in my mid-30s now. I need to establish some security that I've never had before. So, trucking. Where did that come from? And out of left field, he became a trucker.
Trucking? Well, wasn't where I ever thought I'd see Eric. But then I started seeing posts online, pictures from the road, snapshots of sunrises, wide open skies, and there was something in his smile, a peace, a spark. You could just tell he had found something that fit. When I asked him about it, he said it just made sense. He had discovered he had this amazing ability to focus for hours, driving long distances without getting tired. For someone who thrives in motion, who loves the sky and craves the open road, it felt like the perfect blend of freedom and purpose. So what do you do when you feel a pull like that? You follow it, straight to the DMV for a CDL.
Finding that doing trucking school, getting my CDL, being hired, all of these were attainable goals, and I was able to take pride in my accomplishments in a way that never really had before. Learning what I'm capable of, and especially outside of my comfort zone. So, yeah, I spent a few years over the road. That was a very trying time, because while I loved it, I do love, I love traveling. Living on the road was great. And that wasn't the hard part. And especially loved having my home with me. Something I really liked was I could request my time off anywhere in the country.
As much as there was for Eric to love about this newfound career, being one with the road, the freedom, the ever-changing skies, it wasn't all open highways and scenic overlooks. There were cities, tight turns, precarious loading docks, tucked behind chaotic warehouses. There were people on the other side of the freight, waiting, demanding, sometimes rude, often impatient. And there were days when it felt like too much, days when Eric thought, I can't do this anymore. But here's the thing about Eric. He doesn't quit. Instead of giving up, he goes inward. He shifts. Because shifting, that's what he does best. It's what he's always done. On the road, in his art, in his life. When his world gets heavy, Eric shifts into something stronger, deeper, and truer.
I am a propane delivery driver, and so I'm using my trucking, my CDL. I also earned my endorsements, my hazmat and tanker endorsements necessary for the job. So I drive a tanker. Again, it's that feeling of, yeah, I did that. I earned that. I worked for it. So I'm proud of my achievements. And I finally have a good paying job that is very steady and even keel and does not put me through extreme stress, highs and lows.
Eric has shifted, literally and figuratively, into a space of stability, creativity, and purpose. He's found a job that not only pays the bills, but gives him something even more valuable: time. Time to create, time to breathe, time to bring his art to life in a way he's never been able to before. And since our initial conversation, Eric shared with me that he's currently working on transforming Shift, the comic he originally created to protect himself during hard times, into a musical for his queer community. It's bold, it's joyful, it's healing, it's everything Eric is. As we wrap up our time together, I ask him 2 questions. I ask all of my guests. What makes you smile today?
I'll never not feel loved. I have a loving family and loving friends, people who love me. I go to bed knowing that despite what we went through as a family in the 90s, I know that I'm loved.
If you could leave our listeners with one piece of advice, what would it be? And here's what Eric had to say.
Within all limitations exists infinite possibilities.
What a fitting note to leave us on. Within all limitations exist infinite possibility. I think Ericc has shown us again and again just how true that is. He has taken his life and turned it around and around. And even though his soul is wise, his heart and spirit remain young. So it's my guess that whatever limitations may come his way, Ericc will continue to see them for what they are, possibilities in disguise. And knowing him, he'll turn every single one into gold. You can find links to Ericc's artwork and more about him in the show notes, or visit www.changehappenedpodcast.com and click on Season 1 Guests. Want to reach out? Drop us a message on Instagram at changehappenedpodcast, or email me directly at changepodcast@yahoo.com. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please share it with a friend or leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. It truly does help us grow, and I'm so grateful for each and every one of you for listening.
There's always a reason to always choose joy. There's something deeper that the world can't destroy. Smile when you think you can't. Smile, get up and dance. Smile, there's a bigger plan. The storm only lasts for a while, so smile.
Thank you for tuning in to Change Happened, Then What? I hope today's story offered you insight, connection, or even just a little moment of peace or a smile. Our theme music is Smile by Sidewalk Prophets from their album Things That Got Us Here. You can learn more about their music at sidewalkprophets.com. Have your own Then What story to share? I'm currently seeking guests for Season 2. Change brought you here. You can email me at changepodcast@yahoo.com. I'd love to hear from you. Change Happened, Then What? Is written, edited, and produced by me, Heather Holt, here at Holt Hill Studios with the help of my 2 co-producers, Waylon and Dalton. Until next time, take care of your heart and keep smiling.